Hi there, Butchie. It's Ros. Now, when I get to read a kind of newly released bit of fiction, if I like it, if I can, I like to do a kind of a quick informal review, and I want to do that for Eliza Clark's book Penance, because this really surprised me by how much I enjoyed it. So Eliza Clark's a youngish writer from the north of England. She's still in her 20s, I think. She was hailed as a bit of a sort of wunderkind when she brought her debut novel, Boy Parts. I didn't read that, but this is her second novel, and I was able to get it from the library. And she'd sort of stuck in my mind because she'd been picked as one of Granta's best young British novelists earlier this year. This book is the kind of thing that if I just sort of, I don't know, read the blurb, I might think, oh, that's probably not for me. It's about 3 teenage girls who commit the most sort of horrific murder of a fellow schoolgirl from their school. They live in this little seaside town in the north of England, and the book is supposedly an investigative sort of journalist and true crime author giving an account, writing a book about this crime, and it based on his interviews and his research, and so. But of course, it's all completely fictional. It's not true crime. It's fictional true crime. As I was reading this book, I just thought it's so clever. Structurally, this book is just brilliant. What she does is she makes this entirely convincing, unreliable narrator, Alex Corelli, who's self-serving, but also, quite thorough. And through the book, we get his sort of transcripts of interviews. We get chunks that are like transcripts of true crime blogs, or like little bits from we get bits of text, bits of social, so bits of social media, Tumblr features in this, fan fiction or sort of fan sites around true crime and so on. He all puts all this together, and then but we, the reader, are observing the things that he's missing as he does that, the times when he's not really listening, or when you realise he's actually sort of exploiting the people that he's interviewing, or making things up and putting his spin on events that the facts don't necessarily support. But you never know. All the way through, you're constantly wondering what is going on and what's true and what's fiction. Except, of course, it's all fiction. I love that kind of meta stuff, but I might not have gone for this because, it's about teenage girls. I think it's really interesting how authors are managing to incorporate sort of social media into fiction now, and into sort of the long form novel, and I think, sometimes it fails miserably, and I thought she pulled it off really, really successfully. I really enjoy an unreliable narrator. I was thinking of books to kind of compare this with, from that point of view, with sort of playing with, what's fact and what's fiction, and but when it's all fiction. And the book that sprung to mind was Case Study by Graham McRae Burnett. This came out last year, and it was longlisted for the Booker Prize last year. It was a bit of a Marmite book because, again, you don't you don't know sort of what to believe, and then as you read it, you just realize, my experience of this book was, it was so clever. I really enjoyed the way it was structured and the way it was written, and I feel the same way about this one. If you read this and hated it, then this might not be for you. On the other hand, it was upside down, wasn't it? The added element for this, I think, is whereas this is about psychotherapy and counselling, and which I suppose is a common experience. What this book has is what it's like being at school, what it's like being a teenager, a child and a teenager, what bullying means, how do we negotiate those relationships, and anyone who's been through that, anyone who's been to school, basically, anyone who's been young, there's things in this book that will resonate for you. And anyone who's ever sort of watched a bit aghast one of these sort of true crime sort of series or podcasts or whatever, and thought, why do people obsess about this? Again, this is for you. It's very I found it very pacey. I read it in space of 48 hours because I kept wanting to go back to it. And it also, it challenges, I suppose, our prurient interest in sort of lurid details of crime. And then the structure of a typical true crime book, non-fiction book, would be that towards it sort of gives you teasers about how horrific the crime was, and that you'll sort of, with an expectation that you'll get the payoff of all the full gory details sort of towards the end. But instead, what you get at the end of this book is the sort of the undoing of the fictional author of the true crime book that this is supposed to be. So definitely a recommendation. Not a perfect book, but really enjoyable and stimulating. Yeah. If you've read it, tell me what you think. I think it could be a Marmite one. It could be one where opinions differ.